Hello, 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 hello. So I guess, like me, a lot of you guys who are subscribed to the Bondware website got an email this week announcing the arrival of Poser 14, and a quick scan down the list of new features um, kind of makes me wonder if Poser's just completely dead now. Uh, you could argue that it's 10 to 15 years out of date technologically anyway. Unreal has been doing better than Poser for 10 years at least, and there are plenty of other programs now out there, and even Daz Studio, which is free, is light years ahead of Poser in many ways. But anyway, let's just quickly go through this, and I can't help but think that Bondware is completely delusional. So we'll just read through the press release first. So it says the latest version of the world's favourite 3D character design tool is here, packed with fresh features to make your art shine. With a smooth, fresh features, I don't know about that. With a smoother workflow, upgraded Superfly rendering for jaw-dropping realism, and a huge library of ready-to-use content. Poser 14 makes creating stunning 3D scenes faster and more fun. Yeah, okay. Actually, no, I'm not going to read it all because there's a lot of it is just puff. Okay, so let me just go over some of the key new features. So, it says backgrounds made easy. Now, this is a feature that I really like. It's very long overdue. So let's just go to Poser 14. So one of the great things about Bondware is that they let you have a 21-day free trial. You just download it and put your email in. So what we do is you go to the material room, and then we choose backgrounds up here. And here's the background room now, and this is a great idea. What you can do is just choose a single color, which you could have always done down here. You could just click on a color, but it also lets you do a picture, and you can choose the aspect ratio, tile it, or whatever. You can choose a movie, or you can choose an environment, which is basically a HDRI image. And if you choose that, you can choose whether to use this would be like an EXR HDR type image. And the great thing about these is that they project colors into the image, so that they're not just a static background, they actually inform the color of everything in the image. And you can choose between the two main standards, which are rectangle and spherical. There is a third standard, which is a cross, but nobody uses that. And you can rotate, which, in a way, this is a bit like that script from Ken 11, but it's just nice and easy laid out here. Anyway, so that's one valuable feature. Okay, so we'll give them that one. Okay, so back to their other list of things. Focus, streamlined, and more affordable. Okay, so now this is really fascinating. They say, we know Poser 14 won't fit everybody. Mac users and those who rely on the cloth room will want to stick with Poser 13. No, fuck off. Mac users don't have a choice about sticking with Poser 13 because you discontinued the Mac version. So that's not, you will want to. No, Mac users would have liked the opportunity to get the latest version of Poser if it was any good, which it isn't, but it just isn't available for them because they are saving money. And I understand that, if 99% of the users are on PC, then it makes no sense to spend the money on Mac, especially as I think they've only got one developer anyway. Now the cloth room, this is a massive. Let's just have a look here. Here's a cloth room. What it lets you do is it lets you create cloth simulations. So it could be sheets, it could be curtains that blow in the wind, it could be clothes that move, it could be karate suits, lots and lots of different things. And taking that out is absolutely terrible, in my opinion. It's, that's not a minor thing. Like the face room was bad enough when they took the face room out. When it was Smith Micro, they took the face room out because nobody used it and it was a pile of crap. But the cloth room is not some inconsequential feature. This would be like taking Firefly rendering out, for example. And I never use Firefly, but some people do. And removing the cloth room, which you'll see if we go to here, see there's no cloth tab anymore, is absolutely massive. I'm still trying to figure out why they took that out, and I can only assume, well, I'll come back to that in a minute actually, because there's something else that they say here. They say the cloth room may return in future updates as we explore new solutions. Now that suggests to me that what they're possibly doing is trying to change the underlying architecture of Poser to make it more versatile for future development. But they don't have a good history of updating it. And then they say here, so bear in mind that they've removed a major feature to reflect the narrowed feature set. The full price of Poser 14 license has been reduced to $175, down from $199, making it easier than ever to step into the later. Fuck off. It's, basically Daz is free and does more, and you were charging $200, and now you're doing us the favour of charging only $175 for technology which is 10 or 15 years out of date. You're not doing people a favour, you're still trying to money grab. As I've said many times before, Poser is a vehicle to software sales, it's not a means unto its end. And the fact that they're managing director or CEO is still too stupid to recognise that is absolutely mind-blowing to me. He's nickel and diming people when really what he should be doing is trying to get people into the ecosystem. But let's just go back to some of the other things that are new. Okay, drag drop done. So the option of a simple materials tab is back. So they've returned a simple materials tab, but they're saying it's here to make texturing fun again. Well, texturing was never fun. It was just a pain in the arse that you did to make the scenes look how you wanted. But anyway, let's pretend that that's true. So it's here to make texturing fun again. Setting up PBR materials is now as easy as tossing in your texture maps from apps like Substance Painter. So what's a PBR? PBR is physically based rendering, and I talk about these all of the time. These are the materials that you primarily use with Superfly renderer. So it could be water, it could be materials, it could be cloth, it could be skies, whatever. And the fact that the program has now gone more in the direction of PBR materials is really excellent. It's a bit like Daz when it went fully towards iLight, and you can still do the old 3D Light was the Daz renderer that was not a PBR. You can still do that, but you have to hunt for that. And I really like the fact that Poser 14 is committing very much to PBR engine. And let me show you how that's going to work. So here's the scene. I've got a rock down here. I go up to the material room, and by default it opens this simple material room. And then what I just do, create simple material, and now I just click on any area, and I can browse and grab the bits that I want. So let me just show you here. Let me see. I want to go to here. So here's a rock material that I've created with Substance Designer. In fact, I didn't create it, I downloaded. So this is Substance Designer. What it is a node-based material designer that lets you create parametric or mathematically generated materials from a mixture of maths nodes and graphics nodes. So you could have like a rock material at the beginning and then apply all of these different steps to it in this series, and then at the end here it pumps out these maps. And here's an example of these maps. So this is an industry standard. So you'd have a normal map, a roughness map, specular map, a height map, glossiness map, and diffuse maps or base color maps. So what they've done is created an engine in Poser 4 that makes it much easier to load those. In fact, let me just give you an example. So we'll create a map on that rock. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to go to that directory. So I'm in the base color map, which is here, over here somewhere, and I'm just going to choose the base color here, and I'm just going to leave that now. Here's where I think it's not as straightforward as it pretends to be. So now I'm in the specular. So let's find specular. And when you use Substance Designer and export, you can choose which of these maps to export. But I just chose a default SBR or SBS file, and just outputted all of the different maps, so they're there for any program I choose to work in. Okay, so I'll go back to Poser 4 and I'm going to work my way through that. So there's no emission. Emission is kind of brightness, self-illumination. There's no transparency for this because it's a tileable texture. Roughness map, yep, we know there's one of them because I saw that. Where's roughness? Roughness there. Bump map, I don't think there's a bump map. We'll do a normal map, which is that purpley looking one. Right, is a bump map there? No bump map. It's using a normal map in place of a bump map. Displacement map, I don't think there was one. Then there's a metallic map, but there really shouldn't be any metallic rock anyway. Let's have a look. Metallic, there you go. It's black. It's basically saying don't do any metallic. Right, so that has greatly simplified the process of creating a texture, but it's the same as the old physically based root node. It's just laid out in an easier way, but you still need to know these values. So it isn't really easier, it's just an easier way of loading them in. And now if I were to render that rock, so that material is kind of ready, but I don't know how rough it should be. I don't know how much normal I should be applying. I don't know how much metallic I should apply. Possibly these values are correct. Maybe there's some jiu-jitsu going on in the background that's saying, well, that's really black, there's no point applying metallic, but I suspect you still have to tweak these values. But here's the thing, if I go to edit, can't open edit. Okay, so even though that's simple, so I click create advanced material, now do edit, and now this is what we used to get before. Still haven't fixed. I say they're making the interface easier and they still haven't got a one-click sort all of this joke out. And now I've got a physical surface node here wired into all that, and by default it also creates a poser surface, although that's not set as a default. And the interesting thing, if you render with Firefly, it still picks up on this physical surface node, so you could actually just delete this, but that was just an easier way of creating this, and now you have to put in some of these values. So basically it just saves you having to do this wiring, but the end result is the same. And I mean, it's good because it means when you render with Superfly that you get these really nice PBR materials that look great. So this scene that I've created here, these can all be created as physically based materials rather than the old Firefly materials, and that's a good thing. So that's probably one of the better things in it. Now if we go to their website, you'll see here there's something else mentioned. So there you go, $175 for the full version, $99.95 for an upgrade, which is about £60, I guess, £65. And if I go to the full version here, and there's a few more things mentioned. Superfly render engine upgraded. Didn't notice that. To use the latest. Oh right, okay. So the render engine is not upgraded, but it uses the latest version of Cycles, which is weird. I always think of the Superfly engine and Cycles as two different things. Cycles is the material construction framework that you use in Blender, and again, a bit like I showed you in Substance Design, it's basically node based. And in Poser, if I go to here and I create a material or something, I go material here, and then I choose a new root node, Cycles, and you'll see here that, sorry, I didn't do root node, just a new node. You'll see here, these are the cycles options that you can do when you're creating your nodes. And what they've done now, if I can just take down my notes, they've added four more additions to this. They've added a new converter called RGB ramp, which I definitely missed. That wasn't there because you could create stuff in cycles that you can't in Poser. And they've also added a shader mixed closure weight, which goes in here. And they've also added two vectors. They've added displacement and vector displacement. I don't really understand the value of those, but so they've added four new nodes, which theoretically give you the latest version of cycles, but that's not true, because one of the things in cycles that is invaluable and gives it a huge advantage over Poser is microfacet displacement. Now, I wibble on about this all the time, but what microfacet displacement means, when you're trying to create something that's got bumps in it, let's think of, say, a rope pattern, you don't necessarily want to model the grain in the ropes. What you want to do is you want to use a height map or a displacement map that makes those bumps stick out from the surface. So it actually modifies the geometry of the rope. It doesn't just, with a bump map, it gives the illusion of depth, but it doesn't change the profile. For anyone who remembers the original Jurassic Park, if you look at the profile of the T-Rex, for example, the profile, even though it looks like really, like elephant skinny and, loads of scales and stuff, when you look along the profile or the Brontosaurus, it's completely smooth because it uses bump maps, not displacement maps, because they either hadn't been invented then or they were too expensive to render. Now, Poser can do displacement maps, but the trouble with Poser is that the displacement depends on the resolution of the geometry. In Firefly, that wasn't the case. In Firefly, you just give it a displacement map and it would do it regardless of how high the resolution of your geometry is. And Cycles has actually had for 3 years now, they call it experimental, but Cycles actually has microfacet displacement, where you give it a bump map, not a bump map, a displacement map, which is a grayscale map, and then that causes the surface, regardless of the resolution of the underlying geometry, it causes that to be displaced. So it's a cheap way of creating detail on a surface that doesn't require you to model something. And the other benefit of that is you can be given somebody else's model without any modeling experience, and you can change that. Say you load a ball, a sphere, you can, without any experience of modeling, create stripes around that sphere just by having a black and white stripe map, for example. So there's a lot of benefit to being able to displace, not just use bumps. And when they say that they use the latest version of Cycles, yet again, it's bullshit. But more importantly, that should have been in Poser 13. They made a big thing about including Cycles in 13 and 12 and whatever. And then it was missing half the things that were in, a third of the things that were in Cycles, and they still haven't fixed that. They've added some more, and that ramp node is one that I personally have missed. But and the benefit is that you can look up a Cycles, a Blender material tutorial, and then replicate it on Poser. So that's really, really useful. But because it still doesn't have at least that, and I couldn't be bothered to go through before this overview and check what other features are missing, but we know that one absolutely vital feature is missing, and that's the microfacet displacement. So let's just go back to their press release then. Okay, so what else have they got? They now support Intel GPUs, Intel Arc GPUs. That's great because Intel entered the GPU market. Anyone who's paying attention will know that GPUs, graphics processing cards, are insanely expensive at the moment, and with RAM prices going up through the roof as well, because AI is sucking up all of the GPUs and sucking up all of the RAM. Intel's entry into the market at a kind of a more economical level is very welcome, and I suspect that in fact I'm certain Intel's not going to have optics, so you're not going to get the very fastest rendering, but at least it supports these budget cards. That's good. And they also have this export formats, dual export format, GLTF and GLB. GLTF, I think, is some global transfer format or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're a format that enables you to export scenes to programs such as Unreal. And GLTF has been called something like the JPEG of 3D. And JPEG, what that did was enable you to transfer images at a much smaller file size to make them practical for transferring over the internet. So this is kind of good, but I don't want to be all negative, but I just think that Poser users are not using Poser because they want to do stuff in Unreal or other programs. They're using Poser because they want to use Poser. You know, if they really knew much about it, they'd be using Blender, or they'd be using DAS, or even, you know, something more serious. So, you know, this is kind of, it's a bit like offering you I don't know, like a cigarette tray on a Rolls Royce. It's like Rolls Royce owners are not looking for that thing, or probably more like putting speed fairings on a tricycle, to be honest. Yeah, this removal of the cloth sim thing is really annoying. The fact there's no Mac version, no Mac version, seems really ill-considered to me. Just quickly going through the other features there, advanced edit, and that really is it. Now, I tell a lie, there's one more thing that they really scream about a lot, and let me just see if I can find it. Right here. Poser 14 also includes a vast library of pre-built content, including characters, clothing, props, and environments. These assets can be easily customized to fit your specific need. No, they can't, not unless you know what you're doing. Or you can create your own assets from scratch using the powerful built-in tools. Again, that's way above the average Poser user. But here's the problem, right? The Poser 13, their big selling point was that there were loads of new assets. That you'd get it, and you'd get loads of materials and figures and backgrounds and all that. And that kind of was good because the rest of the program made a lot of improvements as well. But one of the good things about this that I really like about Bondware is that you can try the program for free for 21 days. You just download it from the downloads page, and then put your email address in, and you can try it without any money changing hands. So you can see whether or not the new features suit your needs. And for most people, they won't, because the negatives vastly outweigh the positives. But the one thing that you really would want to see is this feature here, to see, because most of the new stuff, okay, so what have we got? We've got a quicker way of creating PBR, which you can achieve for 10 quid with a plugin from, here we go, what's the plugin called? I can't remember what it's called now. Go Physical, I believe it's called. There you go, Go Physical, which will convert any texture into a physical texture anyway. It really isn't that difficult here. Look, if I create a new node, root node, physical surface, how hard is it to work out? Oh, I need a material, 2D texture, image map, and now I just need to drag that into there. And the other thing about the simplified version is it doesn't include a lot of these things. There's no transparency, there's none of this anisotropy, there's none of this scatter, which is which affects a subsurface scattering. There's no volume node, none of this down here. So it simplifies making simple materials to an extent, but it's so easy to do them anyway, there really isn't an excuse, you know. And okay, I appreciate it's moving people towards a PBR methodology, just because people might have been a bit nervous of that. But I really think the value of that is very limited. So just to go back to their press release, so you've got the simplified material thing, you've got the addition of 4 new cycles nodes, but not all of the ones that are new. You've got these weird exports, which again, kind of not really for the average Poser user. And then you've got this vast amount of content, which arguably could be the most important selling point. Now, I signed up to the DAS membership for a year. Somebody gave me very kindly, my friend Chris gave me $100 of credits at the Daz store for Christmas. So it kind of inspired me to take out the Daz premium membership. And on that, you get a choice of 7 to 10 new packages every month that you get for free, but it's not free, you paid for them. And you can choose from them. And even when there's a choice of things to choose from, some months there's just nothing that I want. So just giving you, even if it's say 300 items, most of those will be valueless to you because you're never going to use them. So if this came, instead of giving you 500 items, you got 30 credits or 50 credits for stuff up to the value of, whatever, $20 per item or $50 per item or whatever, then this would have some real value to the average person. But just dumping all of the stuff that's out of date on you and saying, whoa, look, assets. And they pull this now on Poser 13. It's not going to work on Poser 14. If you already have Poser 13, this trick is not enough to greatly add to the value of Poser 14. Future Matt here. Not only do you get an unspecified amount of content, and I understand why they don't give it away in the trial, because you could then keep that content and give back the never sign up for the full version, but you don't know what content you're going to get, so it could all be garbage in the first place. Now, my only hope, so that's a basic overview. Massively over expensive and under featured, and the fact they took the cloth room out is amazing, and the cycles thing should have been in the previous version anyway. They, in my opinion, they deliberately held that back to make a selling feature for Poser 14 rather than being loyal to the people who bought Poser 13. And that's the kind of bullshit that kind of makes me hate Bondware. They think they're being slick, but they're not. What they're doing is alienating people and pushing them towards Daz. So would I recommend that you buy this? No, I definitely wouldn't. It's really hard to it's impossible to justify $175. That's not, the program is not good enough to entice people in when Daz is free. And they just did a new version of Daz as well. At $99, I still find that really hard. I'm not a poor person, but apart from anything else, losing the cloth room kind of outweighs what you get from cycles. So honestly, it feels to me as if Daz has gone for a low effort cash grab. They have one programmer working in their studio, and he doesn't have the time, and they're not willing to invest to get this program good. The one interpretation is that they're working on infrastructure stuff at the back, but I don't believe that, to be honest. I think they just have one guy, and there's a limit of how much stuff he can do in a 2-year cycle since Poser 13, and this is the minimum effort that he was able to do, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, if this is an indication of the future of Poser, but I'm pretty grim about it. I think Bondware has completely lost the plot. Sorry to be so negative, guys. Fuck you, Bondware. I don't give a damn about you. You haven't served your loyal customers ever, and this definitely isn't an example of you even attempting to do so. So there you go.